Welcome to this explainer. Today we're zeroing in on an absolute foundational pillar of enterprise architecture. Think of this session as your personal masterclass on the Oracle Order-to-Cash pricing engine. Because honestly, whether you're setting up a brand new catalog from scratch, or you're just trying to untangle some really complex pricing logic, getting your price lists right in Oracle Cloud Order Management is absolutely critical. So let's just dive right into it.
Here's our game plan for today. We'll start with the pricing foundation, then move into rules and adjustments, followed by pricing configurable items. After that, we'll tackle coverages and subscriptions, and we'll wrap up with price list maintenance.
All right, Section 1, the pricing foundation. This is your baseline of pricing.
At its core, a price list in Oracle is exactly what it sounds like, but, highly contextualized. It's basically a group of prices for specific items or services designed for a certain set of customers and valid for a very particular time frame. This is your baseline. The pricing engine always needs a starting point, which it calls the base list price, before it applies any of that fancy math later on.
Now, what's really cool is how flexible these starting points actually are. A single price list holds various item prices, which the system calls pricing charges. And these charges can be vastly different in nature. You might have a straightforward one-time charge, like say selling a mobile phone for $445. Or you could have a recurring charge, like a $15 monthly service fee. Both of these live perfectly happily side by side within your pricing architecture.
So you might be wondering, how does Oracle actually calculate that base list price? Well, you generally have three methods. First up, you've got a simple fixed price, which is just like typing in $445 for that phone. Second is cost plus. Here, the system pulls real-time cost data, say your cost is $390, and it adds a defined markup, like $55, bringing us right back to that $445 base. Third is the covered item percentage. So if you sell a warranty that is 15% of the phone's price, the system calculates that dynamically on the fly. Three distinct paths, but they all lead to your base list price.
Moving right along to Section 2, rules and adjustments. This is where we modify those prices.
Once you have a base price, you're going to modify it using adjustments, which fall into two major buckets. First, we have tier-based adjustments. This is basically your volume discounting. For example, maybe you offer $50 off if a customer buys up to 10 units. On the flip side, we have attribute-based adjustments. These trigger based on specific traits. You can automatically apply a 3% discount to literally any item in the hand sanitizers category, or you could trigger specific pricing depending on the customer, like giving your customer Vision $100 off while giving manufacturer 123 a flat 7.5% discount.
But wait, listen up, because this is a massive system constraint you absolutely have to be aware of. You cannot, under any circumstances, mix tier-based and attribute-based adjustments for coverage items. If you try to combine volume discounts with specific customer attribute discounts on something like a warranty or service coverage, the system just will not support it. So keep those rules separate for your coverages, for sure.
Now, aside from those automated rules, we also have manual adjustments. These are incredibly useful for your order entry specialists, letting them tweak prices directly during a live transaction. But here's the trick. They aren't actually defined as rules in the price list itself. Instead, as an administrator, you must intentionally check the Allow Manual Adjustments box on that specific charge setting. Actually, if you don't check that box, that price is locked in stone. No exceptions.
Okay, on to Section 3, pricing configurable items or pricing assembled goods.
Picture this. You have a configured product. Let's call it Desktop 123. The root model has a base price of $500. But then the customer starts configuring it, right? They add a $50 hard drive, $30 of RAM, and a $20 modem. The Oracle pricing engine does the heavy lifting here and automatically calculates this, presenting a final roll-up price of $600. It dynamically aggregates all those tiny components into one seamless, customer-facing charge.
To make that magic happen, though, you have to follow three specific rules. First, every single component must have a defined charge. And I mean every component. Even if you're giving a piece away for free, you have to define its charge as $0. Otherwise, the whole roll-up breaks. Second, remember those tier and attribute adjustments we just talked about? You can only apply them to the root item, not the individual components. And finally, if you want a specific component to be cheaper only when it's bought with a specific model, you can set a model-specific price, and that will completely override the standard component price.
Let's pivot to Section 4, coverages and subscriptions. This is where we add time variables into the mix.
When you're selling a subscription or a warranty, you have to define the duration using one of three service duration types. Fixed means the duration, like 3 years for instance, is set in the Product Information Management System, or PIM, and it's strictly read-only everywhere else. Variable means it defaults from PIM, but your order entry specialists can actually go in and change it. And open-ended means there's no default at all. The user has to enter the time frame right at the time of order. Oh, and I have a huge setup tip for you here. Make sure your time unit of measure mapping is set up correctly in order management, because if it's not mapped, the system literally won't be able to display a price for your coverage item.
So, assuming you've got all those units of measure properly mapped, you're probably wondering, how exactly is duration-based pricing calculated under the hood?
Let's break down the math, because this brilliantly illustrates how all these variables interact. The base formula is simple. Unit price times quantity times service duration. Take a look at the Vision Trade magazine column. It's $50 a year, times one subscription, times 2 years. That results in a duration extended amount of $100. But if it's billed monthly, like the recurring service on the right, it's $10 a month times one subscription times 24 months. That gives you an extended amount of $240. The engine just effortlessly scales the calculation based on whatever time period parameters you throw at it.
And finally, Section 5, Price List Maintenance. Let's talk about managing those really large catalogs.
If you're working directly in the modern Redwood user interface, you'll find it's incredibly user-friendly for making quick edits. But keep in mind, by default, the UI caps mass updates to 250 records at a time. While you can technically adjust this limit, it's generally best to use the UI for targeted, day-to-day catalog management.
When you need to do the really heavy lifting, like creating pricing tiers in bulk or migrating massive catalogs from an old system, you're going to want to turn to File-Based Data Import, or FBD, using the Excel integration. It's a hugely powerful tool. But listen, you have to adhere to 2 major warnings here. Do not batch upload price lists that contain coverage items, and do not batch upload price lists with configuration options. Doing so is going to cause a nightmare of data validation errors. Those complex items really should be imported one at a time or handled outside of your massive bulk standard item imports.
And as you process all those massive batches, the interface tables in Oracle will start to fill up with what is essentially digital dust, which will eventually drag down your import performance. It's a huge best practice to schedule the delete pricing data from interface tables process to run automatically during your off-peak hours. Just remember, whatever you do, never run this cleanup process at the exact same time you're actively trying to import new lists. Finally, before any of these massive pricing updates actually hit the live system, you can and should govern them. You can work entirely safely in draft mode. Then, using the BPM work list, you can design automated approval workflows. You might require sequential approvals, where, say, a manager has to approve before a director even sees it. Or you can use parallel approvals, where multiple stakeholders review it simultaneously before the new pricing takes effect.
Well, we've covered a lot today. The foundation, the rules, those complex configurations, time-based coverages, and even massive data management. It is a ton of power at your fingertips. So I want to leave you with this final thought. As your product catalog inevitably grows, are you going to let your pricing engine remain a rigid, error-prone manual task? Or will you use the architecture we discussed today to turn it into an automated, highly scalable advantage for your entire enterprise? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and honestly, I can't wait to see what you build with all of this.